So the first idea of visual Kabbalah came to me in 2000. I was studying the manuscripts in the library of the Jewish community in Mantua. And while I had to examine all the manuscripts, one leaf after the other, and in doing this, I noticed a huge amount of illustrations. I didn't expect it. In fact, I was used to theoretical Kabbalah. I've read and studied the classical studies in this field, Geshem Scholem, all major authors. I've read a lot of printed editions of Jewish mystical texts. But working with manuscripts was different. And in fact, for the mystical, for the students of mysticism, for the people who use mysticism in their life during the past, the visual lore was very, very important. Not only theory, not only dry theory, but also images were in the center of their study and of their life. Such a huge amount of visual lore has been ignored, mainly ignored, by the classical school of history of the Kabbalah. Let's say, I asked myself why, after noticing this large amount of visual lore, I asked myself why, for instance, Geshem Scholem, his school, has ignored this material. And possible answer is that Scholem was heavily influenced by the German idealistic philosophy. And in fact, some of his basic approach to this field is influenced by Schelling, by Molitor, by German culture of 19th century. And within this culture, what is important, for instance, Schelling, are the ideas and images, and the visual dimension is less important, quite less important. It's not the core of the message. The core of the message is theory, theoretical reasoning, ideal patterns. And I think that this is one of the reasons this German, heavily influenced by philosophy, this German attitude of Scholem and of all his, I would say, the major part of his students, pupils, they reflect this attitude. So visual must be minor, but must be something practical, but not the core of the mystical message. The core of the mystical message is theory. But if you open a manuscript of Lurianic Kabbalah, if you open often also a manuscript of medieval Kabbalah, you will find a lot of images. Why? What's for? This was my question. The question I put to myself when I discovered this material. And then I started to try to analyze it and to link this visual lore to the theoretical one. To see, so my first studies and the book I published in Italian in 2005, which is the result of quite a number of studies, previous studies, the question is, how could we find a link between theory and images? Why this visual dimension is important for the early Kabbalists from the very beginning of the Kabbalah till till to the time of Tellurian Kabbalah. Why it's so crucial for them, and why and how can we examine visual and theoretical sides as a whole, as something that is functions together. So, what is this? What is the goal of these images? I would say that what the Kabbalists attempted from the very beginning, so the first dated manuscript Kabbalistic manuscripts comes from the 80s of the 13th century and was copied, at least in part, in Rome. And in these manuscripts there are already quite a lot of diagrams, very important ones. So from the very beginning, the Kabbalists, at least from the 13th century, the Kabbalists used images. What they try to depict with these images, they try to catch an idea, the structure, the pattern of the world of the emanation. So they, in fact, try to depict what cannot be depicted. So it's a paradox. The world of emanation is the world of the divine, the world of the Godhead, and is invisible. How can you catch the invisible? Usually, it seems impossible. In fact, it's fascinating to me because the Kabbalistic tradition is the only tradition, or the main tradition, within the larger corpus of the theories of the emanation, which tries to give also a visual representation of this emanation. Think about Neoplatonic philosophy. That is the source of this emanational structure. In Neoplatonic philosophy, there's no attempt, if you take the manuscript of Plotin, of Proclus, of all the major philosophers that belong to this school, there's no attempt to visualize, so you get images through words, but in the manuscript there's no images. This school doesn't try, the Greek philosophical school doesn't try to visualize the emanation. The Kabbalists, they do try to visualize the emanation in a very sketchy way. So they usually sketch the pattern of the divine forces, they sketch the structure of the Sephirotic tree. They try to depict in a very sketchy way the relationship between the forces with the emanation. This is, we don't know, at least I don't know, but I think that it's too early to be sure about if it exists a tradition from the late antiquity, from the time of the Neoplatonic philosophy in Greek culture, if it exists a tradition which goes from the earlier time of the theory about the emanation to the medieval Kabbalistic theories about the Sephirotic world and the divine structure. We don't know if it exists, this is not documented, this tradition. Anyway, and we don't know if it exists something before this Kabbalistic period, as far as the visual dimension is concerned. We don't have diagrams in the Greek manuscripts. We don't have diagrams in philosophical late manuscripts. We have something in logical manuscripts, but not in philosophical Neoplatonic theories. And suddenly it blossoms within the Kabbalistic circles. Suddenly we have sketchy sketchy diagrams of the forces, of the energy, of the Godhead, of the emanation within the Kabbalistic text. Obviously, the Sephirotic pattern, the so-called Sephirotic tree, is the best example of it. The Sephirot in the medieval Kabbalah can be conceived as different grades and different patterns of the divine energy. According to the emanation theory, the energy comes from a center, from a source, which gives around itself energy without being deprived from energy. So it's always full. It's like a pool, which is, or a divine source which is always full, which remains full while sending energy around itself. This is the main concept of emanation. You have a source from which energy springs around, but the source remains. It doesn't get empty. It remains full. So it's a paradox. You have a source which is always full, and a periphery and different grades around this source which are always getting full. And this is one of the ways according to which you can read a Sephirotic tree. Like a kind of diffusion of, let's say, liquid energy. And this is the etymology of the Latin word emanare. And in Greek it's aporeo. Aporein is the same idea of streaming of water, in this case, of a kind of water which is at the same time also light. You have in the Kabbalistic symbology that the water becomes light and the light becomes water. They behave in the same, according to a very similar pattern. So the Sephirotic tree is a visual representation of this streaming of energy according to different grades, steps. Usually we know the pattern of a Sephirotic tree with Sephirot of the two sides and a line of Sephirot in the center. This is only one of the possibilities that we encounter in medieval manuscripts. So this pattern, the famous Sephirotic tree that we all know, is one of the many different ways of representing Sephirot which we encounter in medieval manuscripts. We have circles, we have Sephirot depicted in a circle. We have Sephirot like consonants, one within the other, like boxes, one within the other. So there are many possibilities. And this vast amount of representations reflects, I would say, also the experimental aspect of Jewish mystical lore during the Middle Ages. There's no fixed patterns. We have very different attempts to catch this mysterious world, and according to the different ways we can find, also according to the different theoretical ways, we can find also different visual ways. This is very interesting. So I would say that the visual world is not something that comes after, just in order to teach Kabbalah, to exemplify Kabbalah, but to my opinion, the visual dimensions goes together, one step after the other, with the searching of hypotheses, the searching of ways to understand what is not understandable, in fact, what is escapes human mind. Let's say the hidden structure of the Godhead. What I mean? I mean that with this idea, I mean that Kabbalistic lore is a quest, is a research, and a research which is theory, which is a literary effort, but which is also a visualizing effort, an effort of depicting in the mind and then depicting on the paper, on a scroll, hypothesis. There's no other way to understand, I think, the Godhead. There was no other way for the Kabbalists during the Middle Ages to understand the Godhead, to the divine energy, than to analyze it by writing, and at the same time analyzing it and depicting it in a visual form. This is my opinion, and this is why I think the visual dimension is connected so tightly with the theoretical research. We maybe risk to perceive and to understand the Kabbalah as a fixed lore which has been transmitted from generation to generation. And in fact, the Kabbalists also, they want to give us this idea that they received, that's why the word Kabbalah, this tradition, they received a fixed lore from the antiquity and they transmitted it. In fact, I think it's not like this. Kabbalah is a research, is an attempt, and it's very rich in experimental energy. And this experimental dimension is the result of a combination of bringing together theory and visualizing. It's an attempt, the attempt emerges from thinking about text, writing text, and trying to depict this hidden, mysterious, divine world.